Have you ever wondered why we sometimes make decisions that seem incredibly foolish in hindsight? Or why does our gut feeling occasionally tell us one thing, but reality turns out completely different? We often hear the advice, trust your intuition, right? It sounds romantic and self-assured, but is our intuition always reliable? There's a famous saying that our lives change in two ways, through the people we meet and the books we read. But books are like a vast ocean. How do we choose the ones that are truly worth our time and the ones that can genuinely shift our perspective on the world and ourselves, especially when our time is so limited? One of the ways we at BookSmart Insights choose books is by looking for the big fish. Those classic, foundational works cited and referenced by countless other authors, the ones that others build upon. And today, we're going to dissect a real big fish in psychology and behavioral economics. A book that, I believe, once you truly understand it, will change the way you see your own thinking and decision-making forever. That book is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. So what makes this book so incredibly special? Daniel Kahneman isn't just a brilliant psychologist. He was also awarded the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences in 2002. A phenomenal achievement, as he was the first psychologist ever to receive this honor. His work revolutionized our understanding of the decision-making process, revealing how seemingly irrational factors powerfully influence human behavior. In fact, Richard Thaler, the 2017 Nobel laureate in economics and Kahneman's student, continued to build upon these foundational ideas. Both mentor and mentee focused their research on a fascinating subject: human irrationality. Now, I know Thinking Fast and Slow has a reputation for being quite dense and quite academic. Even I had to spend considerable time and focus on reading it the first time. Initially, I hesitated about whether to share it on the channel, fearing it might be a bit dry. But then I realized that our community of book lovers, you wonderful friends following BookSmart Insights, are increasingly eager to delve deeper into the essence of things. We don't just want quick-fix tools for immediate problems. We want to understand the core principles that govern how we operate. It's true, thinking fast and slow won't give you a 5-step checklist for instant success, but it offers something far more valuable: wisdom, a profound understanding of your mind, and the cognitive traps we often fall into unconsciously. As the saying goes, know thyself, know thy enemy. 1,000 battles, 1,000 victories. Understanding ourselves is the crucial first step towards making wiser choices in life. So, how does our brain actually work? Why do we sometimes act on impulse and make mistakes? And how can we avoid those cognitive biases? Let's peel back the layers of Thinking Fast and Slow together with BookSmart Insights to find the answers. This journey might be a bit long, but I promise it will be incredibly rewarding. All right, let's get started. The title, Thinking Fast and Slow, isn't just catchy. It perfectly describes the two fundamental modes of thought that exist side by side in every one of our brains. The author, Daniel Kahneman, simply calls them System 1 and System 2. It might sound a bit technical, but trust me, they're incredibly relevant to our daily experiences. Let's imagine this. You're walking down the street and suddenly see someone frowning, glaring intently at you. Instantly, you sense their anger or annoyance. You don't need to sit down and analyze every facial feature, every gesture. That emotional message hits you quickly, automatically, almost instantaneously. That's System 1 at work. Or what if I ask you, what's 2 plus 2? You blurt out 4 without much thought. Effortless, familiar. This is also the domain of System 1. Let's try a different calculation. What's 37 multiplied by 24? See, most of us have to pause. You might start calculating mentally or reach for a pen and paper. This process requires concentration, conscious effort, and time. You need to mobilize mathematical rules and hold numbers in your working memory. This is when System 2 steps in. So, how can we picture these two systems? System 1, fast thinking, operates automatically and quickly, with little or no effort and no sense of voluntary control. Relies on intuition, emotions, impressions, habits, and stored experiences. It's like the brain's autopilot mode. You don't need to consciously manage every small action. Think about driving on a familiar road, reading simple words, or understanding common phrases. It helps us process a vast amount of information efficiently in our daily lives. Imagine if you had to think slow about everything. You'd be completely overwhelmed. However, System 1 is easily influenced by fleeting emotions, unconscious biases, and superficial impressions. It tends to jump to conclusions based on incomplete information. System 2, slow thinking, operates slowly, requiring effort, focus, and conscious attention. Responsible for complex mental activities like logical reasoning, analysis, problem-solving, complex calculations, and self-control. It's like the manual control mode. You have to actively steer and pay attention to details. System 2 is capable of deeper analysis, considering different possibilities and making decisions based on reason. Its drawbacks are that it consumes a lot of mental energy and gets tired easily. When we're fatigued, stressed, or distracted, System 2 often yields the stage to System 1. And it's also quite lazy. In the book Procrastination, there's a great metaphor of the elephant and the rider. System 1 is like the huge, powerful elephant, full of emotions and instincts. System 2 is the small rider, trying to guide the elephant with reason. Most of the time, the elephant, System 1, goes where it wants, and the rider, System 2, can only try to steer it slightly, or, sometimes, just rationalize the path the elephant has already chosen. Now, these two systems don't operate in complete isolation. They interact constantly. System 1 continuously generates impressions, intuitions, intentions, and feelings for System 2. If everything seems okay, System 2 often accepts these suggestions without much scrutiny. This is the brain's way of conserving energy. Only when System 1 encounters difficulty, something unexpected, or signs of an error, does it call for help from System 2. At that point, System 2 is mobilized to analyze the situation more carefully. As Kahneman puts it, when intuition runs into trouble, reason steps in to solve it. Sounds quite logical and efficient, doesn't it? Intuition handles the simple stuff, and reason tackles the complex. But here's the catch. Reality isn't quite that neat. We often take pride in our ability to reason logically and in human rationality. We believe we make decisions based on careful consideration. However, through decades of psychological experiments and research, Daniel Kahneman reached a rather humbling conclusion. Irrationality is the foundation for most of our actions and decisions. Why is that? Let's go back to our two systems. System 2, our rational system, though powerful, is very lazy and energy-hungry. The human brain, by its nature, always seeks to conserve energy as much as possible. Just like we always look for shortcuts or prefer easier tasks. Therefore, the brain has a natural tendency to rely heavily on System 1. It loves the speed, ease, and automatic nature of System 1. Instead of expending effort for System 2 to analyze and evaluate, the brain often readily accepts the initial judgments and impressions offered by System 1, as long as they seem plausible on the surface. And the result? System 1, with all its speed, but also its emotional biases and prejudices, becomes the ruler, making most of our decisions in most situations. We act based on feelings, habits, and familiarity, rarely pausing to truly think. This leads to a critical problem: cognitive biases. We make flawed decisions and hold distorted views without even realizing it, simply because we trust the mental shortcuts of System 1 too much. Think about the times you bought something just because it was on a massive sale, even if you didn't really need it. Or the times you judged someone based solely on their appearance or a few initial words. Or when you stubbornly defend your viewpoint, despite evidence to the contrary, just because you felt it was right. These are all signs that System 1 is in charge, and the lazy System 2 is asleep at the wheel. The legendary investor Warren Buffett once said, "The most important quality for an investor is temperament, not intellect." You need a temperament that neither derives great pleasure from being with the crowd or against the crowd. That temperament, needed to control the urges that get other people into trouble in investing, largely involves managing System 1: fear, greed, over-optimism, and herd mentality. The fact that we often act irrationally doesn't mean we are stupid. It's simply how our brains are designed to operate efficiently, conserving energy in most everyday situations. But in today's complex world, filled with overwhelming information and critical decisions, blindly relying on System 1 can lead to detrimental consequences. So what specific mental shortcuts of System 1 often lead us astray? Let's explore some of the most common biases and psychological effects Kahneman identified. This is where we truly peek under the hood of our thinking machine. Now, let's delve into some of the most common system errors of System 1, the cognitive biases that cause us to perceive the world and make decisions inaccurately. See if you recognize yourself in any of these situations. Situation 1, the representativeness heuristic. If it looks like a duck, is our tendency to judge the likelihood of something or classify an object based on how similar it is to a typical example or a stereotype we hold in our minds, often ignoring crucial statistical base rates. For example, when you see someone neatly dressed, wearing glasses, and reading a book on the bus, you might instinctively assume they have a high level of education, like a professor or PhD. Why? Because that image fits the intellectual stereotype in your head. You might ignore the statistical fact that there are likely far more people with average education levels, like office workers or laborers, riding the bus than professors. Your System 1 simply goes, looks like X, probably is X. Another example, in hiring, recruiters can fall prey to this. An applicant from a prestigious university, stereotype, good school equals smart student, might be rated more highly than an equally qualified candidate from a lesser-known school, even before thoroughly examining their actual experience and skills. In medicine, the doctor might diagnose an illness based on a common disease's typical symptoms, potentially overlooking a rarer condition with similar initial signs. In investing, investors might pour money into a hot new tech startup just because it looks like a previously successful company, similar field, business model, without digging deep into its fundamentals, like financials, management team, or actual market potential. This bias makes us judge based on stereotypes and appearances, ignoring vital statistics and probabilities. It can lead to discrimination, poor investment choices, and inaccurate medical diagnoses. As Carl Sagan famously stated, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. We need actual evidence, not just a superficial resemblance. Situation 2. The availability heuristic. If I can recall it, it must be common. This is our tendency to estimate the frequency or probability of an event based on how easily examples of it come to mind. Things that are easy to remember, vivid or emotionally charged, often negative, sensational events, are perceived as more common than they actually are. For example, after seeing constant news coverage of plane crashes, many people become fearful and opt to drive or take the train for long journeys, even though flying is statistically much safer than driving. Why? Because images of plane crashes are vivid, haunting, and readily available in memory. Due to intense media coverage, car accidents, though more frequent, are less sensationalized and thus less available in our minds. Another example, people often overestimate the risk of shark attacks after watching movies like Jaws or hearing news of a rare attack, while the actual risk of dying from a bee sting or lightning strike is higher. In risk management, companies might focus excessively on preventing rare but dramatic risks like terrorism, while neglecting more mundane but potentially more damaging risks over time, like system failures or poor processes. In marketing, advertisers often use memorable stories or vivid imagery to make their product or its benefits more available in the consumer's mind, even if the benefit isn't significantly superior to competitors. This bias distorts our perception of risk and frequency. We might worry excessively about unlikely events and become complacent about common dangers. It also makes us susceptible to sensationalized, unrepresentative information in the media. As Mark Twain purportedly said, though the origin is debated, there are three kinds of lies: lies, damned lies, and statistics. Sometimes the way information is presented, making it available, can itself be a form of lie about actual frequency. Situation 3. The causality bias. There must be a reason. This is our brain's innate tendency to seek and impose cause and effect relationships on events, even when they are merely coincidental or supported by little evidence. System 1 loves coherent stories with clear beginnings and endings, and finding a cause provides a sense of understanding and control. For example, when a star athlete suddenly performs poorly, people immediately search for explanations. He must have been too nervous, just bad luck, or didn't train hard enough. Instead of accepting that performance can fluctuate randomly, we try to assign a specific cause, often without solid proof. Another example. A manager sees a surge in sales this month after launching a new marketing campaign. They might quickly conclude the campaign was a huge success and decide to invest more in it. However, the increase could be due to various other factors: seasonality, competitors' issues, macroeconomic trends, or even just random variation. System 1 wants a simple narrative. Action A led to result B. In superstition, this is fertile ground for the causality bias. Wore a red shirt for an exam and got a high score? Next time, you'll definitely wear that shirt again, believing it brings good luck. A random coincidence is interpreted as a causal link. In understanding complex events, when trying to explain historical events or stock market fluctuations, we often construct plausible cause and effect narratives, but the reality might be the result of countless interacting factors and significant randomness. This bias makes us see patterns where only randomness exists, leading to false conclusions about why things happen. This can result in repeating mistakes if we believe in the wrong cause, or missing opportunities if we fail to recognize the role of luck. Physicist Richard Feynman warned, "The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool." Our brains are adept at fooling ourselves with compelling causal stories. These three biases are just a few prominent examples among the myriad mental shortcuts System 1 employs. They operate silently and automatically, and we often remain completely unaware of their influence. But that's not all. Other psychological effects, also stemming from System 1's workings, powerfully shape our judgments and decisions. Let's explore those next. Beyond the cognitive biases we've discussed, Kahneman describes several other psychological effects that show how easily System 1 is swayed by seemingly irrelevant factors. These effects are not only fascinating academically, but are also widely applied and sometimes exploited in everyday life, especially in business and marketing. Effect 1. The halo effect. First impressions outshine everything. This is the phenomenon where our initial positive impression of a person, brand, or product in one area, often appearance, fame, or a standout quality, spills over to influence our judgment of their other characteristics, even when we lack sufficient information. For example, the joking phrase, "You're beautiful, you're talented, and whatever you say is right," perfectly captures this effect. If we find someone physically attractive or articulate, we tend to automatically assume they are also more intelligent, kind, and trustworthy, without concrete evidence. The celebrity effect. This is the most obvious application in advertising. Why do brands spend millions hiring celebrities to endorse products? Because of the public's positive feelings and admiration, the halo, for the celebrity transfer to the product they represent. We're more likely to trust a product simply because a celebrity we like uses or promotes it. Our System 1 reasons, celebrity A is great, the product they use must also be great. In job interviews, a candidate who makes a strong first impression, sharp attire, confident demeanor, articulate answer to the first question, can create a positive halo, making the interviewer more likely to rate subsequent answers favorably, potentially overlooking minor weaknesses. Conversely, a poor initial impression can create a horn effect, causing everything the candidate does afterward to be viewed more critically. In product brand evaluation, if you have a great experience with one Apple product, like an iPhone, you're more likely to believe other Apple products, MacBooks, iPads, are also high quality, even before you've actually used them. The halo effect leads us to make global judgments based on limited or irrelevant information. We can be blinded by appearances, fame, or one salient feature, overlooking other crucial factors. It results in biased evaluations of people and things, making us easily swayed by image rather than substance. This is why first impressions are so critical in social interactions, but also why they are a cognitive trap to be wary of. Effect 2. The anchoring effect. The first number haunts your mind. This is our tendency to rely too heavily on the first piece of information offered, the anchor, when making decisions or estimates. Even if that information is irrelevant or inaccurate, it exerts a powerful pull on our subsequent thoughts and judgments. For example, during sales promotions, you often see the original price crossed out next to the sale price. For instance, original price, $100. Now only $69. The $100 is the anchor. It makes the $69 price seem like a much better deal, even if the product's true value is lower, or $69 is still expensive compared to alternatives. The seller has dropped an anchor in your mind, and your purchasing decision is influenced by it. In negotiations, the person who makes the first offer often gains an advantage because they set the anchor. For example, in salary negotiations, if the employer proposes an initial salary, the anchor, the candidate tends to adjust their demands around that figure rather than starting from their independent desired salary. Conversely, if the candidate states their desired salary first, they anchor the employer. In estimations, consider this experiment done by Kahneman and Tversky. Participants were divided into two groups. Group 1 was asked, is the percentage of African nations in the UN greater or less than 10%? Group 2 was asked, is the percentage of African nations in the UN greater or less than 65%? Then both groups were asked to estimate the actual percentage. The result? Group 1 with the 10% anchor gave significantly lower average estimates than Group 2 with the 65% anchor. The initial anchor number, though arbitrary, influenced their estimations. In real estate pricing, the initial listing price of a house, the anchor, can heavily influence the price buyers are willing to offer, even if they try to objectively assess the home's true value. The anchoring effect can lead us to make decisions based on arbitrary or manipulated initial information. We might pay too much, accept unfair deals, or make inaccurate estimates simply because we're fixated on the first number we encounter. To combat this effect, we need to be aware of potential anchors and actively seek out other reference points before making a final judgment. Effect 3. The framing effect. Same water, half empty or half full glass? This is the phenomenon where our decisions are influenced by the way information is presented, how it's framed, not just by the information itself. The exact same choice, if described in positive terms, emphasizing gains, success rates, versus negative terms, emphasizing losses, failure rates, can lead to vastly different decisions. For example, a surgical procedure has a 90% survival rate. The doctor can tell the patient's family in two ways. Option 1, positive frame. The survival rate for this surgery is 90%. Option 2, negative frame. The mortality rate for this surgery is 10%. Logically, both statements convey identical information. Yet, most people feel more optimistic and are more likely to consent to the surgery when they hear the first version. Our System 1 is more sensitive to the positive word survival than the negative word mortality. In advertising, ground beef can be marketed as 80% lean, positive frame, or 20% fat, negative frame. Clearly, the 80% lean framing is much more appealing to health-conscious consumers. In public policy, to encourage participation in an energy-saving program, the government could highlight the amount of money people save each year, positive frame, or the amount they lose if they don't participate, negative frame, leveraging loss aversion, which we'll touch on next. The framing can significantly impact participation rates. In investment choices, an investment plan might be presented as having a 70% chance of success or a 30% risk of failure. Investors might feel more comfortable with the first presentation. The framing effect shows that we don't always make decisions based on a rational analysis of the facts. How information is packaged can manipulate our emotions and choices. We need to learn to look past the frame, consider information from multiple perspectives, and understand the underlying substance before deciding. As the saying goes, don't judge a book by its cover. But our System 1 is very easily fooled by the cover. Effect 4. The endowment effect. My stuff is always worth more. This is the psychological tendency where we value things we own more highly than their objective market value, or more than we would be willing to pay for them if we didn't own them. In other words, once something becomes mine, it suddenly seems more precious in my eyes. For example, the free returns within 7 days policy offered by many retailers sounds generous, but it cleverly leverages the endowment effect. Once you've taken the product home, held it, and used it, you start to feel it's yours. You tend to overvalue it and feel a pang of loss at the thought of returning it. Unless the product is clearly defective, return rates are often relatively low. Businesses understand that once a customer possesses an item, even temporarily, they become more reluctant to part with it. Kahneman and his partner did an experiment. Students were divided into two groups. Group 1 received a university mug worth about $6. Group 2 received nothing. Then, Group 1 was asked how much they'd sell the mug for. Group 2 was asked how much they'd pay to buy the mug. The result? On average, the mug owners, Group 1, demanded twice as much to sell the mug as the non-owners, Group 2, were willing to pay. Simply possessing the mug significantly increased its perceived value. In selling homes or used goods, sellers often price their possessions, houses, cars, old furniture, higher than the market's willingness to pay. They have an emotional attachment and overestimate the value of what they own. The endowment effect is closely linked to another crucial concept, loss aversion. Kahneman and Tversky found that, for humans, the pain of losing something is psychologically about twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining something equivalent. Having to give up an item you possess, a loss, feels worse than the joy of acquiring a similar item. The endowment effect can lead to irrational economic decisions. We might hold on to useless items or reject reasonable offers simply due to an unwillingness to part with our possessions. In investing, it can cause us to hold on to losing investments for too long, hoping they'll recover, rather than cutting losses and moving to better opportunities, simply because we hate to realize the loss on something we own. These biases and effects are like invisible colored glasses we wear without realizing it. They distort our view of reality, leading us to make choices that feel like our own but are actually shaped by hidden influences. As Kahneman wrote, we are prone to trust our familiar intuitions, but we are often blind to our blindness, and we tend to overestimate how much we understand the world. So, how do we take off these colored glasses? How do we overcome the traps of System 1 and make wiser decisions? This is the most crucial part. Recognizing the existence of System 1 and System 2 and the multitude of biases and effects is the first step. But it's not enough. Knowing you can make mistakes is one thing. Knowing how to actually avoid them is another. Daniel Kahneman doesn't just describe the problems. He offers valuable suggestions to help us improve our judgment and decision-making. These aren't magic formulas, but methods requiring self-awareness and deliberate practice. Practice 1. Know thyself. The first key, the most critical step, as emphasized earlier, is to become aware of your own thinking patterns and biases. Ask yourself honestly, do I often judge people by first impressions? Halo effect? Am I easily swayed by the first numbers I hear when shopping or negotiating? Anchoring effect? Do I tend to believe sensational news and worry excessively about rare risks? Availability heuristic? Do I try to find a reason for everything, even when it might be a random chance? Causality bias? Do I value my own possessions more highly than they might actually be worth? Endowment effect? Be honest. Read books. Learn about cognitive biases. Thinking fast and slow is an excellent start. And observe your own thoughts and actions in daily life. Only when you know where you typically stumble can you begin to avoid those potholes. This is the foundation of emotional intelligence and self-awareness. As the philosopher Socrates said, to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. Practice 2. Slow down. Give System 2 a chance. The greatest enemy of reason is haste. System 1 operates at lightning speed, while System 2 needs time to warm up and analyze. Therefore, one of the most effective strategies is to consciously slow down your thinking process, especially before making important decisions. Before deciding, don't react instantly based on your first emotion or impression. Pause. Take a deep breath. Give yourself a moment of quiet space for System 2 to engage. Ask questions. Instead of immediately accepting the first thought that pops into your head, ask yourself challenging questions. Is there another way to look at this? Is this information reliable? Are my emotions influencing me? If I were in someone else's shoes, what would I think? Seek more information. Don't make decisions based on the limited data System 1 provides. Actively search for more data, different perspectives, and objective evidence. Sleep on it. Sometimes sleeping on it is highly effective for truly significant decisions. It allows emotions to settle and gives System 2 more time to process information calmly. Slowing down doesn't mean you need to meticulously analyze every minor choice in life. That's impossible and unnecessary. But for choices that significantly impact your work, finances, health, or relationships, taking the time to think slow is crucial. Practice 3. Cultivate focus. Awaken System 2. System 2 requires focus to operate effectively. But in our modern world, overflowing with distractions, phone notifications, social media, email, our ability to concentrate is constantly eroding. We're easily swept away by thousands of fleeting thoughts, making it difficult for System 2 to exert its full power. So, how can we improve our focus? Practice mindfulness and meditation. These are incredibly powerful tools for training the mind, helping you become aware of and manage your stream of thoughts, and strengthening your ability to focus on the present moment. Even just a few minutes each day of observing your breath or bodily sensations can make a significant difference over time. It helps you notice when your mind wanders and gently bring it back to the task. Minimize distractions. When you need to make an important decision or perform work requiring deep thought, try to eliminate distractions. Turn off unnecessary notifications. Find a quiet space and dedicate specific blocks of time for focused work. Exercise your brain. Engaging in activities that require logical thinking, problem solving, learning a new skill, etc., is also a way to work out System 2, helping it become stronger and sharper. Focus is like a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it gets. When you have better focus, you can more easily activate and sustain System 2's operations when needed. Practice 4. Fuel your brain. Don't decide when hungry. This might sound a bit odd, but it's scientifically grounded. System 2 consumes a lot of energy. When your body is tired or low on energy, like when you're hungry, System 2 becomes lazier and less effective. This makes it even easier for System 1 to take over. The Judge Study. Kahneman cites a fascinating study showing that judges were significantly more likely to grant parole requests after a meal break than before it. When the judges were refueled, their System 2 functioned better, making them more willing to engage in the complex decision of granting parole. When tired and hungry, they tended to default to the easier decision: denial, the status quo, less effortful. Practical advice: avoid making important decisions when you're exhausted, extremely stressed, or hungry. Ensure you have sufficient physical and mental energy. Sometimes, even a light snack or a short break can significantly improve your clarity of thought. Practice 5. Embrace outside perspectives. Two heads are better than one. We are often terrible at spotting our own mistakes, but quite good at noticing the flaws in others' reasoning. This is an interesting psychological truth. Therefore, an effective way to compensate for our own blind spots is to actively seek out and listen to the opinions, feedback, and even criticism from others, especially those you trust and who have different perspectives. Don't isolate yourself. When facing a tough decision, don't just rely on your own thoughts. Share the problem with others, friends, colleagues, mentors. They might see angles you missed or point out biases you didn't recognize. Welcome criticism. Having your intuition questioned or challenged by others can feel uncomfortable, but view it as an opportunity to test your reasoning. Someone truly committed to making the best decision isn't afraid to hear dissenting opinions. As Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater Associates, emphasizes the importance of thoughtful disagreement in reaching the best decisions. Seek diversity of thought. Try to consult people with different backgrounds, experiences, and ways of thinking. This diversity provides a more comprehensive view of the issue. Practice 6. Conduct a pre-mortem before acting. Prepare for failure. This is a fascinating and useful technique recommended by Kahneman and developed by psychologist Gary Klein. The name sounds a bit morbid, but the idea is simple and powerful. The process: gather the relevant people before launching a plan or making a major decision. Then, ask everyone to imagine that the plan/decision has already been implemented and it failed miserably. Find reasons for failure. Next, have each person independently write down all the reasons why the plan failed. Why was the decision wrong? What went awry? Analyze and prevent. Finally, collect all these potential reasons for failure. This exercise helps identify risks and weaknesses in the plan that might have been overlooked due to initial optimism. Another System 1 bias. You can then proactively adjust the plan and implement preventive measures to increase the likelihood of success. The pre-mortem technique helps counter groupthink and excessive optimism, forcing us to systematically confront potential negative outcomes before they happen. Applying these methods won't guarantee you'll never make a mistake again. Humans are inherently fallible, but they will undoubtedly help you increase the odds of making wiser decisions, minimize the impact of cognitive biases, and deploy System 2 more effectively when it truly matters. It's an ongoing process of training, requiring patience and self-awareness. Thinking Fast and Slow isn't just another psychology book. It's a monumental work summarizing decades of research by Daniel Kahneman and his late collaborator, Amos Tversky. The book created ripples across the globe, not only in academia, but also profoundly influencing fields like economics, finance, medicine, public policy, and even our individual daily lives. Critics and readers worldwide have lauded the book for its brilliance, profound insights, and practical relevance. The New York Times called it a masterpiece, a landmark book in social thought. The Economist described Kahneman and Tversky's work as one of the greatest partnerships in the history of ideas. Of course, some find the book quite lengthy and demanding of concentration. Some later research has also questioned or refined certain aspects of the original experiments. But there's no denying that Thinking Fast and Slow laid a solid foundation for the field of behavioral economics and forever changed our understanding of human decision-making. So, what's the most important takeaway after our journey through this book with BookSmart Insights? Always remember that within our minds operate two systems: the fast, intuitive, but error-prone System 1, and the slow, rational, but rather lazy System 2. And most of the time, it's the irrationality of System 1 that guides our actions. Recognizing this isn't meant to make us pessimistic about ourselves, but rather to remind us to be more cautious about our instant judgments, to know when to slow down, muster our focus, and activate the analytical power of System 2. That's the key to avoiding unnecessary mistakes and making choices truly aligned with our goals and values. The journey of self-discovery through books is never-ending, and Thinking Fast and Slow is undoubtedly a significant milestone on that path. I hope that through our discussion today, you've gained a deeper insight into how your mind works and feel motivated to continually sharpen your thinking and make wiser choices every day. Thank you so much for spending time exploring this rather long and deep topic with BookSmart Insights today. If you found this video helpful, please don't hesitate to share it with friends you think might also be interested. And of course, if you enjoy content like this, exploring knowledge and personal growth through books, please support the channel by hitting that like button, and most importantly, subscribe to BookSmart Insights right now. Don't forget to click the little notification bell next to it so you won't miss any new videos released weekly. What are your thoughts on System 1 and System 2? Do you recognize which biases you fall prey to most often? Please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. Once again, thank you sincerely for joining me. Goodbye for now, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video from BookSmart Insights.